Today I thought I wanted to do something different. I actually wanted to step back in time, and we're going all the way back to 2018 when Panasonic released their EVA-1 camera, which you can see in front of me here now. And I wanted to see if this camera is still relevant today after 3 years release. Now, there are so many new cameras coming to market, but they're not necessarily, I think, better than the ones that are already there. Now, Panasonic have held off this line. Their first came with the AF100, which was a micro four thirds camera, and we had to wait many years before they released this Super 35 camera. Now they are releasing their S1H cameras, S1, S5 and so on, and I wanted to see how this camera can actually fit into my workflow and being a documentary filmmaker. Now, as you can see here, I have the camera rigged up with a Canon 18-80 lens, which is my favorite go-to lens for shooting documentaries. And I have rigged it up with the Blackmagic 5-inch 4K recorder, and I realized I didn't have the correct cable to be able to utilize the raw output. As you can see here, they are using micro BNC connectors, and the camera receives a standard HD SDI mount BNC. So my tests are only going to be, or only in 4K DCI, which is the format I usually shoot. But you can actually shoot 5.7K RAW, Blackmagic RAW with this camera, and I think that's fantastic. And I love shooting with B-RAW. I think B-RAW is a fantastic codec. It's easy to work with, it's small, and it's just a wonderful codec to work with in DaVinci Resolve. So you can see here I have done a little bit of rigging. I have a matte box in front. Now, that is not for the camera to look cool. It actually has a purpose, which is I can adjust flares coming into the lens. That has been bugging me for a while, so I invested in a small bright tangerine. This is the Misfit Atom. And I have two handles here. This is just a mounted on a little small rig mount that costs like, I don't know, not too many dollars. It's very cheap. And I have these handles here as well, so I can actually go handheld with this camera. And my standard Liebeck tripod, where I can just put it in the tripod real quick. And I have also mounted my favorite handle, which is the Sakudo handle. I can pick up the camera real easily. It's really sturdy as well. I've just mounted a standard NATO rail on top of the camera and a cold shoe adapter so I can actually mount the monitor. Now, the main gripe for me with this setup is that I have to use separate batteries. Now, these are Sony batteries. What goes in the camera is Panasonic's own batteries, but I find this is a small and nimble solution. The main gripe people are having with this camera is the screen. Now, this is actually my first time using the camera, and I have to say that Panasonic ditched the viewfinder. Okay, that's fine, but they put in an LCD screen, which is some of the worst I have ever seen. It's just bad. What they should have done instead is they could have just released the body, and what I'm actually using is I have all this display. I'm not sure if you can see, but I'll show real quick, turn the camera on. And what I do is I just go to home mode. I'm using the screen as a just as a tool, which gives me information about my shutter angle, about my picture profile setting, which is Vlog right now, and the Kelvin settings. This should have just been a little display on the camera itself, just like a lot of these older the Sony F5, F55 and all these cameras already have it. Then you can just choose your own monitor you want to work with. So that I think that's a real minus point with this camera. Now, this isn't going to be a full-blown review because this is only a loaner camera and I don't have the time before I have to return it, but there are plenty of specs online. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this camera out in this configuration and I'm just going to shoot some images on my farm and see what the images look like, if they hold up, and what it's like to work with. And also I wanted to see how easy and fast I can color grade these images for fast turnaround projects. Now, a lot of stuff you see online that's shot in log is sometimes I feel personally that shooting in log, it may not always be the best option. It's a good option if we're in high dynamic range areas, a lot of contrast, but and also if you wanted to have that special look to your scene. And also, you obviously capture the most dynamic range, but it's not always the fastest to work with. Personally, I have used Canon's cameras, and I'm having trouble. I'm having issues color grading those images myself. And I wanted to see if Panasonic is actually easier to work with. I've heard that it's easier to work with. I read it, but I'm not sure. So I just wanted to take the camera out for myself and see if it is relevant today. I'm impressed. I'm thoroughly impressed, and I'm actually blown away by what I saw on this wonderful Blackmagic recorder. The images just look lovely. I've shot everything in Vlog, and I've shot Vlog before, so I'm just going to see how that's turning out. But I used the built-in LUT from Blackmagic on the monitor, and it just looked wonderful. And operational wise, you can see here on the side that all the buttons, they're just in the right place. It was very intuitive to use. I didn't have to use many buttons. Obviously, the one negative thing I can say is the LCD monitor. That's basically useless outdoors in the sun. Even with this little screen, I could see my settings, and that's basically it. They should have definitely replace this one in the if they ever release an EVA2, and so that's that's the negative point I have to say about this camera. Now this lens, it doesn't communicate as well as with my Canon C70 camera, but operational wise, this camera just blew my CV70 out of the water completely. This is just a proper camera. Now, what didn't work, obviously, is the autofocus. That's really bad. Panasonic isn't known for having their best autofocus. This is a manual setup, so if you go for a setup like this is manual. You have to understand that you need to use this in manual mode. And if you understand how to do that, then this is one of the best combinations I have ever used. And I have used a lot of cameras. And even just a small little thing like these little buttons here, they just remind me of the good old days with the good old shoulder mounted cameras I used to shoot a lot of rally stuff on for broadcast. And the same thing here. With this here you can toggle between your white balance and your ISO. But what actually is, of course, most important is the images, and I can sit here all day talking about the camera, but that's not really interesting. So I'm going to take these images into my computer, and I'm going to see how quick I can color grade and turn around my images and deliver them to the client. Now, I'm not going to deliver these images to any client. This is just my own tests. Being a documentary filmmaker, I need a camera that can suit my needs, and I have to say I'm considering just selling off my Canon C70, and I think that says a lot. But anyway, I'm not going to do that for right now. Obviously, I'm just going to go into my computer. I'm going to color grade my footage, and I'm going to show you what it looks like.